The first thing Evan Hale noticed about the alien palace was how quiet it was. Not silent, never silent, but controlled. Every sound felt measured. Footsteps were soft, voices low, even the air systems hummed at a careful, respectful tone. Nothing here happened by accident. Everything had purpose. Evan stood near the edge of the grand hall, hands folded behind his back, wearing the dark blue uniform of the Terran Cultural Exchange Corps. He felt very human here, too human. He was taller than most Velari, broader, his movements less graceful. Where they flowed, he stepped. Where they paused, he hesitated. Around him, representatives of dozens of species sat or hovered in carefully arranged tiers. This was not a celebration. It was a remembrance. At the center of the hall, beneath a ceiling that shimmered like frozen starlight, a single Velari musician stood alone. The Velari were tall and slender, with skin that shifted softly between shades of silver and pale blue. Their eyes reflected light instead of absorbing it, making them seem distant, always looking past the present moment. Their culture was ancient, older than most known civilizations, and deeply private. When the musician lifted the instrument, the room grew even quieter. The sound that followed was not loud. It did not demand attention. It invited it. The melody drifted outward like breath on cold glass. Slow, careful. Each note carried weight, not in volume but in feeling. It felt old. Not ancient like ruins or stars, but old like memory, like something passed from parent to child without ever being written down. Evan didn't understand the structure of the music. It didn't follow human rules. There was no clear rhythm he could count, no familiar scale. And yet, as the melody continued, something inside him tightened. His chest felt heavy. His thoughts slowed, and without realizing it, Evan inhaled and hummed. It was quiet, barely audible, just a soft sound beneath his breath, but it matched the melody perfectly. The note left his lips before his mind could stop it, sliding into a space between the Velari tones like it had always belonged there. His voice followed the song, not copying it, but completing it, answering a question the music had asked. The effect was immediate. The musician's hands froze mid-motion. The note hanging in the air collapsed into silence. Across the hall, heads turned. Eyes widened. Some delegates shifted in alarm. Others leaned forward, confused. Evan felt the silence hit him like a physical force. His heart jumped. He stopped humming instantly, mouth closing as heat rushed to his face. What did I do? The Velari musician slowly lowered the instrument. His gaze moved across the hall until it found Evan. Their eyes met, and the musician's expression changed from shock to something deeper. Recognition. A ripple of quiet tension spread through the room. Then another figure rose from her seat near the center dais. Princess Seelan of the Velari Dominion. She moved with controlled grace, long robes flowing like liquid light around her. Her presence shifted the room. Not through authority alone, but through gravity, as if the air itself leaned toward her. She walked toward Evan, each step unhurried. Evan swallowed and straightened. Every instinct told him he had crossed some invisible line. He tried to remember every briefing he had ever received. Cultural sensitivity, non-interference. Observe, do not participate. Too late now. The princess stopped a few steps away from him. She studied his face closely, her luminous eyes searching not just his expression, but something beneath it. Then she spoke. Her voice was calm, quiet, and perfectly clear. "No one else knows that song," she said. The words landed harder than any accusation. The hall remained silent, waiting. Evan felt his pulse in his ears. He forced himself to meet her gaze. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I don't even know how I knew it." A murmur spread through the delegates. Seelan did not look away. "That melody is not recorded," she said. "It is not transmitted. It is not taught to those outside our bloodline." Evan shook his head. "I've never heard it before, I swear." Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but focus. "Then explain," she said softly, "how you sang the answer." The question hung between them. Evan opened his mouth, then closed it again. The truth was he didn't have one. "I just felt where it was going," he said finally. "Like finishing a sentence someone else started." That was when Seelan fell completely still. For the first time since she approached him, something flickered across her composed expression. Not suspicion, fear. She turned slowly and addressed the gathered assembly. "This session is concluded," she said. There was no argument. No hesitation. Delegates rose, conversations breaking out in hushed, urgent tones. The Velari guards stepped forward, guiding guests toward the exits. Within minutes, the grand hall was nearly empty. Evan remained where he stood, unsure if he was allowed to move. Seelan turned back to him. "You will come with me," she said. It was not a request. He nodded. "Of course." They walked through a series of quiet corridors, their footsteps echoing softly against smooth, pale walls. The palace interior felt less like a building and more like a living space shaped around thought rather than function. No guards followed them. That made Evan more nervous than if they had. They entered a smaller chamber, circular and softly lit. The walls displayed faint moving patterns, slow shifts of light and shadow that reminded Evan of waves. Seelan gestured for him to sit. She remained standing. "You are human," she said. "Yes. You are not trained in Velari culture." "No." "You have never heard our morning hymn." Evan hesitated. "Morning hymn," her gaze sharpened. "That song is sung only when a royal life is lost." His stomach dropped. "I'm sorry," he said again, quietly. "I didn't know." She studied him for a long moment, then finally sat across from him. "That hymn was written for my mother," Seelan said. The words were simple, their weight was not. "She died before your species achieved faster-than-light travel," she continued. "Before humanity knew we existed." Evan felt cold spread through his hands. "Then how," she asked, voice low, "did you know how it ends?" Evan stared at the floor, searching his own memories. There was nothing, no hidden recording, no dream he could point to. Just a feeling, an echo in his chest that had felt right. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but when the music started it felt familiar, like grief does, like loss, like saying goodbye when you don't get enough time." Seelan's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "Our scientists say human emotions are unusually intense," she said. "But this is not emotion, this is memory." Evan looked up. "Maybe humans are just good at recognizing patterns," he offered weakly. She shook her head. "That melody does not follow mathematical pattern. It follows experience." Silence settled between them. Far away, Evan could hear the faint hum of the palace systems, life continuing as if nothing had changed, but everything had. Seelan stood again and walked toward the wall. With a subtle gesture, the light patterns shifted, forming images. Velari history displayed not as words, but as moments. Families, stars, losses. "We believed our culture was safe because it was closed," she said. "That what was unshared could never be taken." She turned back to him. "Now you arrive, and without effort you hear us." Evan felt a strange mix of awe and fear. "I don't think it's just me." Her eyes narrowed again. "Explain." "Humans," he said slowly, choosing his words, "we're built to connect. We don't always do it well, but when we do, when we listen, we feel things that aren't ours. Stories, pain, hope." He swallowed. "Maybe your song wasn't teaching information. Maybe it was sharing a feeling." Seelan considered this. "If that is true," she said, "then your species is dangerous." Evan nodded. "We've been told that before." She watched him carefully, as if seeing humanity for the first time. "Leave the palace," she said at last. "For now." His heart jumped. "Am I in trouble?" "No," she replied. "But others will ask questions, and some will not like the answers." As Evan rose to leave, she spoke again. "That song," she said quietly, "you completed it correctly." He paused at the doorway. "I'm honored," he said, meaning it more deeply than he could explain. When he was gone, Seelan stood alone in the chamber. She closed her eyes, and for the first time since her mother's death, the final note of the hymn no longer felt unfinished. Far across the stars, something ancient had shifted. And humanity had no idea what they had just awakened. Evan Hale left the Velari Palace with his mind still ringing from the last note he had hummed. Outside, the capital city of Lervel looked like a sculpture made of moonlight. Towers curved upward like seashells, bridges arched between them like frozen ribbons, and small hovering lights drifted in slow patterns above the streets. Nothing here rushed, nothing pushed. Even the traffic moved as if it had learned patience from the planet itself. But Evan's thoughts were not patient. He sat in the sealed cabin of the Terran diplomatic shuttle, hands resting on his knees, staring at the faint reflection of his own face in the window. His mouth felt dry. His chest still felt tight. The memory of the Grand Hall's silence played again and again in his head. No one else knows that song. He was not a soldier, not a spy, not a genius. He was a cultural liaison, a professional listener. His job was to study other civilizations and translate customs into something humans could respect. And yet somehow, he had stepped into something older than diplomacy. The shuttle glided toward the human embassy wing, a modest structure compared to the Velari palaces. As it docked, his wrist device buzzed. Director Lyon Park, report immediately. Evan exhaled. That was fast. He entered the embassy, passing security checkpoints and quiet staff corridors. Even the humans were subdued here. Everyone had learned that loud confidence could be mistaken for aggression in a place like this. He reached the director's office and tapped the panel. "Come in," Lyon Park said. Director Park was a woman in her late 40s with steady eyes and a tired expression that never quite left her face. She had spent most of her career balancing human pride against alien caution. She motioned Evan to sit, then activated privacy shielding. A faint hum sealed the room. "What happened?" she asked. Evan hesitated, then told the story from the beginning. The ceremony, the music, his humming, the silence, and the princess's words. Director Park did not interrupt, but as he spoke, her face grew more serious. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair and folded her arms. "Evan," she said carefully, "do you understand the problem?" "I interrupted a royal remembrance," he said, feeling sick again. "That's part of it," she said. "But the larger issue is this. You did something they believe is impossible." Evan stared at his hands. "I didn't mean to." "I believe you," Park said, "but the galaxy doesn't run on intention, it runs on perception." She tapped a control and brought up a hollow display. It showed a spiral chart of coalition member species. Near the top were the Velari. Beneath them were dozens of others. Humanity was far lower, labeled as new member, developing influence. "The Velari are not just another culture," Park continued. "They are the oldest political power in this region. Half the coalition's traditions and laws exist because the Velari wrote them." Evan looked up. "So if they're upset—" "It's not just upset," Park said. "It's fear. If a Velari princess believes humans can access things that are supposed to be sealed, other species will start asking what else humans can access." Evan swallowed. "But we can't read minds, we can't steal memories." "Try telling that to a species that thinks emotion is a private language," Park replied. "They don't understand us yet. They don't understand what you did, so they will build stories around it." The door panel chimed softly. Director Park frowned. "No one should be interrupting." She touched the panel. A guard's voice came through, tense. "Director, we have a Velari envoy at the gate. They demand entry. It's personal, high level." Park's eyes flicked to Evan. "Do they ask for you?" "Princess Seelan requests Evan Hale specifically," the guard said. Evan's stomach flipped. Director Park stood and smoothed her uniform. "Then we receive them." Minutes later, Princess Seelan entered the office with no visible guards, but Evan could feel the invisible force of her authority. The air seemed to tighten around her presence. She did not sit. Director Park offered a formal greeting in the Velari language, precise and respectful. Seelan listened, then answered in perfect human standard. "I will speak plainly," she said. "Time is thin." Director Park's expression stayed calm. "Of course, Your Highness." Seelan's eyes moved to Evan. "You are not the only one." Evan blinked. "Not the only one who can hear the hidden parts," Seelan replied. Director Park's gaze sharpened. "You've seen this before." Seelan's face remained composed, but her voice lowered. "Long ago, very long ago, there was a species that could do this. They were called the Karun. They were not violent, but they were disruptive." Evan leaned forward without thinking. "What happened to them?" Seelan's eyes darkened with old memory. "They vanished." The word fell into the room like a stone into deep water. Director Park's posture stiffened. "Vanished how?" Seelan paused. "No ships, no ruins, no graves. One cycle they existed, the next they were gone." The coalition believed they had fled, but the Velari suspected something else. Evan felt a chill. "You think someone erased them?" "I think someone feared them," Seelan said softly, "and fear often chooses the fastest solution." Director Park held her gaze. "Are you saying humanity is at risk?" Seelan answered without hesitation. "Yes." The room went quiet. Evan's mind raced. The Karun, a species like humanity in this strange ability, wiped out without a trace. It sounded impossible. It sounded like a nightmare told to scare children, and yet Seelan did not look like someone telling myths. Director Park spoke carefully. "Why are you telling us this?" Seelan's expression changed, only slightly, but Evan saw it, something like reluctance. "Because the hymn you completed was not only grief," Seelan said. "It was a lock. It was meant to remain unfinished to protect what was hidden beneath it." Evan's mouth went dry. "Hidden beneath it?" Seelan turned her hand palm up. A small projection formed above it, a Velari symbol old and complex like a star woven into a knot. "This," she said, "is a marker. It is embedded in the final phrasing of the hymn. It points to an archive, not a vault of objects, a vault of truths. Director Park frowned. Truths about what? Seelan looked at Evan again. About what happened to the Karun, about who did it, and about why the Velari feared the same fate. Evan felt the air leave his lungs. Then why hide it? Because knowledge is a beacon, Seelan said. And some predators hunt by light. Director Park's voice stayed steady, but her eyes were sharp. If this archive exists, why bring it to a human? Seelan's answer was quiet. Because you opened the lock by accident. That means you may be able to open it again on purpose. Evan stared at her. Me. You, she confirmed, or others like you. Director Park turned to Evan. Have you ever experienced anything like this before? Evan searched his memory. Not like that, he said. But sometimes when I listen to alien music, it hits me hard. Sometimes when I read translated poetry, it feels like I already know what it means before I understand the words. I thought it was just empathy. Seelan's eyes did not blink. It is empathy, she said, but refined into something rarer. Director Park paced once, then stopped. We can't make public moves based on a story, she said, but we can take precautions. Seelan stepped closer. Precautions will not be enough if the hunter is already awake. Evan frowned. Hunter? Seelan's gaze drifted for a moment as if she saw something far away. There are those in the coalition who believe the universe must remain predictable. That culture must stay separated. That grief must stay private. That songs must stay in their cages. Director Park's jaw tightened. You mean extremists? Seelan nodded slightly. They call themselves guardians. They see themselves as protectors of order. But order is often just fear with a uniform. Evan felt anger rise in his chest. So because humans can connect, they'll try to cut us out. They may, Seelan said. Or they may try to shape you into something harmless, a tool, a controlled instrument. Director Park's eyes narrowed. That will not happen. Seelan looked at her with something like respect. You speak like a Velari, she said, but you are not surrounded by Velari. You are surrounded by a coalition that smiles while calculating. Evan's wrist device buzzed again, but he ignored it. Director Park asked, What do you want from us? Seelan's voice softened. I want you to survive. And I want you to understand what you are before others decide what you are. Evan stared at her. Then teach us. Seelan hesitated. I cannot teach you to be what you already are, but I can show you the shape of the danger. She lifted her hand and the projection changed, becoming a simple set of dots connected by faint lines. Evan recognized it as a travel network map. One path was highlighted from the Velari capital to a quiet system marked only with an old Velari name. Director Park leaned closer. Where is that? Seelan's eyes remained calm. A place the Coalition forgets on purpose, an archive station, hidden under treaties and false navigation warnings, the last vault of the Karun inquiry. Evan's throat tightened. And you want me to go there? Seelan nodded. Director Park's voice turned firm. Absolutely not. We do not send civilian staff into unknown threats. Seelan looked at her. Then you will watch your people vanish later. The words were not dramatic. They were simple. That made them worse. Evan sat very still. He felt like the room was shrinking around him. Director Park said, We can send a security team. They will see walls, Seelan replied. You will need someone who can hear the meaning inside the walls. Evan let out a slow breath. So you're saying I'm a key? Seelan tilted her head slightly. A key or a signal. Evan felt his pulse quicken. That's not comforting. No, she agreed, but it is true. Director Park walked to her desk and opened a secure channel. If we do anything, she said, it will be controlled, quiet. And with maximum protection. Seelan watched her. Quiet is wise, she said, but you must understand others may already be watching. After the ceremony, word spread faster than you think. Evan's stomach tightened. It was that public. It was a room full of diplomats, Director Park said grim. Yes, it was public. Seelan's gaze returned to Evan. When you hummed, several species reacted with fear, not surprise. That means they have stories about this. They have warnings. Evan rubbed his palms together. Then why didn't anyone tell us? Because to name a fear is to give it shape, Seelan replied, and many prefer fear to remain vague so it cannot be argued against. Director Park's screen lit with incoming messages. She glanced at them, face hardening. We're already getting inquiries, she said. Requests for explanations, demands for interviews, they're moving. Seelan said, then we must move first. Evan looked between them. If we go to this archive, he said slowly, and we learn the truth, what then? Seelan's voice dropped. Then the galaxy will have to choose what kind of civilization it wants to be. Director Park nodded once, sharp and decisive. Evan, she said, you will not leave this embassy until we secure authorization. Evan opened his mouth, then shut it. He didn't like being treated like fragile cargo, but he understood. If Seelan was right, he had become something more than an employee. He had become a target. Seelan stepped closer to Evan, her voice quieter now, almost human in its softness. When you sang, she said, I heard my mother's voice again, not as a recording, not as a memory I forced. I heard it as if she stood behind me. Evan's chest tightened. He didn't know what to say. Seelan continued, that is why I came here myself. That is why I risked bringing you this map. Because if your species can do that, if you can bring the dead into the present through meaning, then you are not simply new members of the coalition. She paused. You are a disturbance to the universe's silence. Evan swallowed hard. We didn't ask for that. No, she said, but the universe rarely asks permission. Director Park ended her secure call and looked at Seelan. We will consider your request, she said. But understand this, if we move carefully, and we move as humans. Seelan's eyes reflected the office light like calm stars. That is all I ask. She turned to leave, then stopped at the doorway. One more warning, she said without looking back. Do not sing that hymn again in public, not even a fragment. Evan frowned. Why? Seelan finally glanced over her shoulder. Her face was composed, but her eyes were not. Because the final note is not just an ending, she whispered. It is a beacon, and someone out there remembers what it means. Then she left. For a long moment, Evan and Director Park said nothing. Outside the office, the embassy corridor lights remained steady, unaware of any danger. The world continued. Staff walked, soft voices exchanged routine words. Everything looked normal. But Evan felt like he was standing on the edge of something immense. Director Park finally exhaled. All right, she said, voice tight. Here, what's going to happen? You're going into protective status. You do not leave the secure wing. You do not talk to anyone without clearance, and you do not, under any circumstances, improvise. Evan gave a shaky half-smile. So, no humming. No humming, Park agreed. She tapped a command and security shutters slid half-closed over the office window. It wasn't dramatic. It was practical. That made Evan's skin crawl. He leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere far away, hidden behind treaties and false warnings, there was an archive station with a locked truth. A truth that might explain why a species like the Karun vanished. A truth that might explain why certain people in the galaxy wanted songs to stay unfinished. Evan thought of the melody again, how it had felt like a sentence needing its last word, how his mind had known where to go without understanding why. He had always believed that humanity's strength was adaptability, curiosity, stubborn hope, the ability to look at the unknown and say, we can learn. Now he wondered if the galaxy had feared that from the start. Director Park's wrist device buzzed again. She read the message and her expression hardened into something like steel. What is it? Evan asked. Park looked at him. It's a formal coalition notice, she said. A request for you to appear before a cultural ethics council. Evan's stomach dropped. Already. Yes, Park said, and it's not a request in the friendly sense. Evan's hands clenched. So they're moving, Park nodded. And if Seelan is right, then someone else is moving too, someone who doesn't use councils. Evan stared at the wall, feeling the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't trained for this. But the song had chosen him in a way, and now the universe was listening for the next note. He whispered almost to himself, I only sang along. Director Park's voice was low but steady. Sometimes, she said, that's enough to start a war or stop one. Evan didn't answer. Outside, across the city, the Valeri Palace glowed quietly under the night sky. And beyond that sky, beyond maps and laws and polite diplomacy, something old and watchful had heard the echo of a human voice. And it had remembered. It had not forgotten the Karun. And it did not intend to let humanity become the same kind of problem. Not again. Evan Hale had never liked waiting. He had always been the kind of person who filled silence with thought, with curiosity, with questions that came faster than answers. But now, inside the secure wing of the human embassy, waiting felt different. Heavy, dangerous. The room he stayed in was comfortable but plain. White walls, soft lighting, no windows, the kind of place designed to calm people down while quietly making sure they could not leave. 2 security officers stood outside the door at all times. They were polite, professional. but their presence was a constant reminder that Evan was no longer just a cultural liaison. He was a variable. Evan sat on the edge of the bed, fingers tapping lightly against his knee. He had not slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, the melody returned, not loudly, not clearly, just enough to remind him it was still there, waiting. He wondered if this was how it started for the Karun. Did they wake up one day and realize the universe was suddenly paying attention to them in the wrong way? His wrist device chimed softly. Director Park's voice came through, low and urgent. "Evan, we need you in the briefing room, now." Evan stood immediately. The door slid open and the guards stepped aside. No words were exchanged. They moved quickly through the corridors, turns and checkpoints blurring together until they reached a sealed chamber deep inside the embassy. Inside, the room was already full. Director Park stood at the center, arms folded. Around her were human officials, military advisors, and one familiar figure standing slightly apart. Princess Seelan. She looked calm, as always, but Evan noticed the faint tension in her posture, the way her hands rested too still at her sides. Park nodded to Evan as he entered. "Sit." A holographic display activated above the table, showing a wide view of space. Several star systems pulsed softly. One, near the edge of the map, blinked red. "That's the archive station," Park said. "And that," she added, tapping another marker, "is the problem." A cluster of unidentified signals hovered near the system. Not ships exactly, not yet. "They're probes," one of the analysts said. "Advanced, stealth-capable, coalition tech but modified," Seelan spoke. "Guardians," she said. Park glanced at her. "You're sure? They do not announce themselves," Seelan replied. "They observe, isolate, then act." Evan felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "So they know about the archive?" "Yes," Seelan said. "And they suspect humanity's involvement." One of the military advisors frowned. "We haven't sent anyone yet." Seelan turned her luminous eyes toward him. "They do not need proof," she said. "They act on patterns, and humans are a new pattern." Park brought up another display. "We intercepted coalition communications. Subtle pressure is being applied, travel restrictions, diplomatic delays, media narratives about human emotional instability." Evan clenched his jaw. "They're painting us as a risk." "They're painting you as a spark," Park corrected. "And sparks make people nervous." Seelan's gaze returned to Evan. "The longer you wait, the more dangerous it becomes," she said. "If the Guardians reach the archive first, they will erase it, and then they will erase anyone who might remember what was there." Evan swallowed. "Including us?" "Yes." Silence filled the room. Finally, Park spoke. "We have authorization for a covert mission, small team, no official flags. If we're discovered, we deny involvement." Evan looked at her. "And me?" Park met his eyes. "You're coming." His heart skipped. I said we wouldn't rush," Park replied. "This isn't rushing, this is survival." Seelan inclined her head slightly. "I will accompany you," she said. Several people reacted at once. Park frowned. "Your Highness, that's a risk." "It is my responsibility," Seelan said calmly. "The archive belongs to my people, and this threat began with a Velari song." Evan looked at her, surprised. "You don't have to do this." She looked back at him. "Neither do you," she said, "but you will." He couldn't argue with that. Preparations moved quickly after that. The ship was small, unmarked, and fast, built for quiet travel, not combat. Evan boarded last, heart pounding as the hatch sealed behind him. The interior was dim, lit by soft blue panels. He took a seat near the center, strapping in with hands that trembled just slightly. Seelan sat across from him. She seemed unaffected by the motion, her posture steady as the ship disengaged from the station and slipped into faster-than-light travel. Stars stretched into lines. Space folded. Evan closed his eyes. He felt it again, that strange pull, like the universe was holding its breath. The journey took longer than Evan expected. Time in transit always felt strange, stretched, and compressed at once. He tried to distract himself by reviewing briefings, but his thoughts kept drifting. "What if I can't open it?" he asked suddenly. Seelan looked up. "You will. You're very confident." "I am very afraid," she corrected. "Fear sharpens certainty." Evan let out a small, humorless laugh. "That's comforting, in a way." She studied him. "Do humans often joke when afraid?" "All the time," he said. "Sometimes it's the only way we know how to breathe." She considered that. "Perhaps that is another reason you endure." The ship shuddered gently as it exited faster-than-light travel. The archive system appeared on the forward display. It was quiet, too quiet, no traffic, no signals, just a lonely star and a cluster of dark shapes orbiting it. "There," the pilot said. Station is ahead. Minimal power signatures. Evan leaned forward. The archive station looked ancient, even by alien standards. Its structure was asymmetrical, layered as if it had been added to over centuries. No lights blinked. No obvious defenses activated. It looks abandoned, Evan said. It is, Seelan replied, by design. As they drew closer, Evan felt pressure build in his chest. Not physical pain, more like emotional weight pressing inward. The ship docked with a soft mechanical sound. The hatch opened. The air inside the station felt different, still. Heavy with something Evan couldn't name. They moved through dark corridors, lights activating as they passed. Symbols lined the walls, Velari, but older than anything Evan had seen before. Some of them felt familiar in a way that made his skin prickle. This place remembers, he murmured. Seelan glanced at him sharply. You feel it already, Evan nodded. It's like walking into a room after an argument. You don't know what happened, but you know it mattered. They reached a central chamber. At its center stood a structure unlike anything Evan had seen. Not a console, not a vault, more like a sculpture of sound frozen into shape. Curved lines intersected at strange angles, forming a hollow space at the center. This is it, Seelan said. The resonance core. Evan stepped closer, his heart pounded. What do I do? He asked. Seelan's voice softened. You listen. He took a slow breath and closed his eyes. At first there was nothing. Then faintly he heard it, not sound exactly, more like the memory of sound. A pressure, a pull, a sense of direction. The melody returned. Incomplete, waiting, Evan swallowed and began to hum, not loudly, just enough. The structure reacted instantly. Light rippled across its surface, patterns shifting and aligning. The air vibrated not unpleasantly, but with purpose. Images burst into existence around them. Stars, worlds, species. The Karun, Evan gasped. They were tall, graceful, with expressive movements and deep, luminous eyes. Their culture bloomed across the display, music, art, shared rituals. They were not conquerors, they were connectors. They were like us, Evan whispered. Yes, Seelan said, voice tight. And that was their crime. The images shifted. The Guardians appeared. Not as monsters, but as officials, committees, councils, calm faces making careful decisions. They said the Karun destabilized cultures, Seelan said, that they blurred necessary boundaries. The display darkened. Ships surrounded Karun worlds, not warships, enforcers. Sanitation fleets. They erased them, Evan said, voice breaking. Slowly, quietly. System by system, Seelan confirmed, until no one remembered their songs. The core pulsed. A new image formed, a warning. A record left unfinished so it would not activate on its own. Seelan stared at it, breath shallow. My people hid this truth because we believed secrecy would protect us. Evan opened his eyes. Tears burned behind them. But secrecy didn't stop the Guardians, he said. It just delayed them. A sudden alarm cut through the chamber. The pilot's voice crackled through the comm. We've got incoming ships, multiple signatures, Guardian fleet. Seelan straightened. They tracked us. Evan's heart raced. Can we transmit this, the truth? Yes, Seelan said, but once we do, there is no going back. Evan looked at the swirling images of the Karun, their erased history burning bright again. Do it, he said. Let everyone hear the song. Seelan placed her hand on the core. Evan joined her. Together, they completed the melody. The station trembled as a powerful signal burst outward, racing across space, carrying not just data, but meaning, grief, warning, truth. The Guardian ships opened fire. The station shook violently. Time to go, the pilot shouted. Evan stumbled as the floor lurched beneath him. Seelan grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the exit. Behind them, the resonance core glowed brighter than ever. As they reached the ship, Evan glanced back one last time. The archive was no longer silent. It was singing. The ship tore free from the station just as explosions rippled through the structure. Light flared, then faded. Silence followed. They jumped to faster-than-light travel moments later. Evan collapsed into his seat, shaking. Seelan closed her eyes, a single tear sliding down her cheek. It is done, she whispered. Evan stared at the stars stretching into lines again. His chest hurt. His heart ached. The galaxy now knew the truth. The Guardians had been exposed. And humanity had just stepped into a role no one could ignore. Somewhere across countless worlds, species were hearing echoes of a song they thought they had lost forever. And they were beginning to understand. Humanity did not conquer with weapons. They conquered silence. And the universe would never be quiet again. The galaxy did not react all at once. At first, there was only confusion. Across hundreds of worlds, sensors detected a strange transmission moving faster than normal data streams. It was not encoded in standard formats. It did not carry commands, coordinates, or political declarations. Many systems flagged it as noise. Then people began to feel it. On a mining world near the edge of Coalition space, an old worker paused mid-task as a soundless weight pressed against his chest. He did not know why his eyes filled with tears. He only knew that something precious had been taken from someone long ago, and that loss had never been acknowledged. On a water-covered planet, a group of scholars studying ancient ruins suddenly understood symbols they had debated for generations. Not as language, but as intent, as feeling, as farewell. On a Velari colony world, elders gathered in silence as the final note of a morning hymn, one that had always felt unfinished, settled into place at last. And everywhere the same realization spread. This was not an attack, it was a memory. Evan Hale felt the change before anyone told him. The ship was still in faster-than-light travel, the stars stretched into pale lines outside the viewport. The interior lights flickered once, then stabilized. Evan sat very still, breathing slowly, trying to steady the shaking in his hands. He felt empty and full, like he had given something away and received something much larger in return. Seelan sat across from him, her posture composed but her eyes distant. She was listening not to the ship but to something far beyond it. "They are hearing it," she said quietly. Evan looked up. "All of them?" "Yes," she replied. "Not in the same way, but enough." The pilot's voice came through the comm again, tense but controlled. "We're getting massive traffic spikes. Coalition channels are lighting up, emergency sessions, accusations, denials." Evan closed his eyes. He imagined the Guardians scrambling, their careful silence shattered by a truth they had buried too deeply. "Are we safe?" he asked. There was a pause. "For now," the pilot said, "but there are ships changing course, some toward us, some away." Seelan's gaze sharpened. "Fear makes people reveal themselves," she said. "That is another kind of truth." The journey back felt longer than the one before. When the ship finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel near human-controlled space, Evan felt like he had aged years in days. His body ached. His mind felt raw, like exposed nerve. As soon as they docked, the hatch opened to reveal Director Park and a small security team waiting. Park's eyes went straight to Evan's face. "You did it," she said. Evan nodded slowly. "We did." They moved quickly through secure corridors into a briefing chamber. Screens already glowed with incoming data. Evan barely had time to sit before voices filled the room. Reports, reactions, uprisings of debate across the coalition. "The Guardians are denying everything," an analyst said, "claiming the transmission is fabricated." "Psychological warfare. Several species are calling for an independent investigation," another added, "including some of the oldest members." Park turned to Seelan. "Your people," Seelan met her gaze. "Divided," she said honestly. "Some are angry, some are ashamed. Some are relieved." Evan leaned forward. "And humanity," Park's mouth tightened into something like a smile. "Officially, we're deeply concerned and seeking clarity. Unofficially," she looked around the room. "Every human delegate who felt that transmission is asking the same question." She paused. "What else have we forgotten?" Evan felt a strange mix of pride and fear. "That's not going to make us popular." "No," Park agreed, "but it makes us necessary." The door slid open. A coalition envoy entered, flanked by two guards, not Velari, not Guardian, a mid-tier species known for careful neutrality. "Director Park," the envoy said, "the council requests your immediate presence and the human called Evan Hale." Evan's heart skipped. "Already." "They cannot wait," the envoy replied. "The transmission has destabilized certain assumptions." Seelan rose smoothly. "I will attend as well." The envoy hesitated. "Your Highness, the council will make room," Seelan said calmly. The council chamber was unlike any room Evan had ever seen. It was vast, circular, and layered, with seating arranged in concentric rings. Hundreds of representatives filled the space, their forms and colors creating a living mosaic. Voices overlapped in a low, constant murmur. When Evan and the others entered, the noise dimmed. Eyes turned, some curious, some wary, some openly hostile. Evan felt exposed, standing there in simple human attire among beings who had ruled space longer than his species had known it existed. A central platform rose. "Order," a voice echoed. "This emergency session is now in effect." The speaker was a Guardian. Evan recognized the symbols, the rigid posture, the carefully controlled expression. This one wore no sign of shame, only authority. The coalition has been subjected to an unauthorized broadcast, the Guardian continued. One that bypassed established safeguards and emotional boundaries. Seelan stepped forward. Truth is not unauthorized simply because it is inconvenient. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Guardian turned toward her. Your Highness, the Velari chose silence. We chose fear, Seelan replied. There is a difference. The Guardian's gaze shifted to Evan. And this, they said, is the human who opened a sealed archive without consent. Evan's mouth went dry, but he forced himself to speak. I didn't open it to steal, he said. His voice carried farther than he expected. I opened it because it was calling out. Because someone wanted to be remembered. Laughter, sharp and cold, echoed from one side of the chamber. Sentiment, a representative sneered. You risk galactic stability for feelings. Evan turned toward the voice. No, he said. We risked it because stability built on erasure isn't stability. It's just quiet injustice. The Guardian raised a hand. Humanity is new, they said. You lack perspective. The Karun were dangerous. They disrupted cultures, blurred identities, weakened boundaries. They connected people, Evan shot back. You feared losing control. The chamber erupted in voices. Order, the central voice commanded again. Director Park stepped forward now. The transmission you're trying to dismiss has already been verified by multiple independent systems, she said. You can deny intent, but you can't deny resonance. Entire civilizations recognized what was taken from them. The Guardian's eyes narrowed. And now humanity positions itself as judge? No, Park said. As witness, Seelan added quietly, and as reminder. A long silence followed, then something unexpected happened. A representative from a small, long-marginalized species stood. My people once sang like that, they said, voice trembling, before we were told our ways were inefficient, before we were taught silence. Another stood, then another. Stories spilled out, not accusations, testimonies, cultures pressured into uniformity. Rituals quietly discouraged, emotional expressions labeled as unstable, all under the careful guidance of order. The Guardian looked around, their composure finally cracking. This is chaos, they said. You invite fragmentation. No, Evan said softly. You mistake difference for danger. The central voice spoke again. The council will recess. The chamber lights dimmed slightly. Representatives clustered into urgent discussions. Guards shifted uneasily. Seelan leaned closer to Evan. This is the moment, she whispered. They cannot erase this now. Too many have heard it. Evan nodded, his chest tight. When the session resumed, the atmosphere had changed. The coalition, the voice announced, will launch a full inquiry into Guardian actions past and present. The Guardian representative stiffened. You cannot. You will comply, the voice continued. Or you will stand apart. It was not a sentence of victory. It was a sentence of accountability. The Guardian said nothing more. As the chamber slowly emptied, Evan felt his knees weaken. Director Park steadied him with a hand on his shoulder. You did well, she said. I didn't plan any of this, Evan replied. She smiled faintly. Neither did history. Days passed, then weeks. The galaxy shifted not suddenly but steadily. Guardian influence weakened as investigations spread. Some members resigned. Others vanished into quiet obscurity. No fleets moved. No worlds burned. The change was not violent. It was loud. Cultures began sharing again. Carefully at first, songs, stories, grief, and humans were asked again and again to listen. Evan found himself busier than ever, not as a diplomat but as a bridge. He sat in rooms with species that had never spoken honestly to one another and helped translate not just words but meaning. He did not sing the hymn again. He did not need to. One evening, Evan stood on a quiet balcony of the human embassy looking out at the stars. The city lights of Lervel shimmered below. Seelan joined him. My people have chosen, she said. Evan looked at her. Chosen what? To open, she replied. Not everything, not all at once, but more than before. He smiled softly. That's brave, she inclined her head. We learned it from you. Evan let out a quiet breath. I still don't understand how I knew the song. Seelan looked at the stars. Perhaps you did not know it, she said. Perhaps you remembered it for someone else. They stood in silence for a while. Will they fear us now? Evan asked. Some already do, Seelan replied, but fear is not always the enemy. Sometimes it is the first step toward respect. Evan nodded. Far across the galaxy, On worlds human ships had never visited, children learned melodies that did not belong to their species alone. Elders shared stories they had been taught to forget. And in the quiet moments between stars, something long suppressed breathed again. Humanity did not rule the galaxy. They did not conquer it. They reminded it how to remember. And once memory returned, silence was no longer an option. The universe had found its voice again, and this time it was not alone.